Okay, good evening everyone. I'd like to call to order this Committee of the Whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores and welcome everybody to Rotary Hall this evening. We're glad that you're here. The second item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest and nature thereof. I'll ask any member if they have a pecuniary interest with anything on the agenda they'd like to declare. Seeing none, of course, you can declare one anytime if you need to. That moves us on to additions, deletions, or amendments. We don't have any of those. That moves us on to the open forum, and we do have 3 folks for the open forum this evening. And I'll just remind everybody before we start that each person on the open forum has 3 minutes. And you'll just come over to the podium, which is right over there to your right, and make sure to hit the button when you get up there. So that moves us then on to the first one, who is Daniel Frank, and he wants to speak to us about beachfront development. Mr. Frank.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I and my family, my name is Daniel Frank. I and my family have been summer visitors to Port Elgin for over 50 years. My wife and I retired here in 2010 and are now taxpayers, and we really like paying our taxes. I am in favor of the beachfront improvement. It may be premature to be talking about that right now, but I'm going to anyway. I feel that because of the way it looks, or has looked in the last 2 years, that it really needs improvement. My suggestion would be to keep it small and simple. Maybe a restaurant, maybe a kids' climbing park, and volleyball courts as well, to get them off of the beach for more towel space. I do have some concerns, though. I'm thinking that the current one that we've seen, and we'll see more of next week, is too ambitious of a plan at this point. I would also point out that Council, each and every one of you councillors, has a fiduciary duty to look into all matters in this and make the correct decision. For instance, investors have not been named yet, and that does concern me a lot. All I would say to that is for you to take a look at what happened in Wasaga Beach 15 years ago when a company came in after they had a fire on their beachfront. A company came in, didn't say who their investors were, and it ended up that, and they had big plans, and by the end, they backed out, and Wasaga was caught holding the bag for the money and so on, and it really hasn't come back, that beach. So that's something to be very concerned about. Now, if the investors don't want to be named publicly, I don't have a problem with that, as long as council, you folks, know who they are and do your due diligence as elected officials. So that's all I'll say right now on this topic. You'll probably hear a lot more from me in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. Our second open forum is from Neil Atchison, also here to speak about beachfront development. Mr. Atchison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's Atchison, to be exact. I'm also here to speak about the beach because it's something that I have visited and lived on all my life. I've been a taxpayer here since 1984, down on Mill Street. And when we finally, after seeing videotapes of a presentation about what's happening and a bit in the paper, we finally find out there's going to be a topic of that specific topic will be discussed on September 3rd. And I'm surprised, and as some people would say, even suspicious, that council would wait until a lot of the cottagers are gone. It tends to... There have been decisions made before regarding the beach or for the beachers, and generally it's after the cottage people go back to where they came from, to quote a president. It's a priority, that beach. It's an amazing facility, and I find it weird that the stakeholders and the neighbors don't even get a letter don't get invitations, don't get a call about these proposals. When I build a shed on my property, everybody in the neighborhood has to get a letter. But when we came up and asked the clerk about that, she said, to be honest, which tends to make one suspicious right away when people start their sentence with, to be honest. That suggests the rest of the time they're not. She said, to be honest, I don't know, but I don't think the town has to tell anybody about what's going on. It's their property, they can do what they want with. It seems to be an a fait accompli decision, and I think perhaps the stakeholders and the users of the beach should be and should have been involved all the way along. The survey results came out, and they aren't resounding for over half the proposals or the suggestions that were in that. And nowhere in the survey results are any of the comments. And I know a number of people made lots of interesting comments with priorities in mind, such things as sanitary, stormwater management, waste management. Is it going to be in-ground? Is it going to be ugly dumpsters sitting around a restaurant and a banquet hall? And that sort of thing. Is there going to be hard surface down there? We asked that question at the town. Nobody could tell. Is it going to be paved? Is it going to be bricks? How are they going to plow the sand in the winter? And so on and so on. Every time we asked questions, we were told we don't know. The only one who knows is the CAO, and he wasn't here every time we wanted. And then they said, perhaps you should call Mr. Danini because he knows everything. And that makes me wonder, too, about
That's 3 minutes, Mr. Aitchison. That's 3 minutes, so if you could just...
Okay, my 3 minutes is up. We'll be back in September.
Thank you. And our third and final open forum is Doug Ordwich. Mr. Ordwich.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. And I'm not going to speak a lot, but I'm going to expand a little bit on what Mr. Aitchison said. My name is Doug Ordwich, and I live on Mill Street also. I'm a seasonal resident. I am here, though, probably 6 or 7 months of the year. And out of all this, the thing that shocked me the most is how few people really know about this. We go to our neighbors, we talk to many of our neighbors. There's a small group that does know about it, but there's a large portion of people who don't have a clue what's going on down there, how it's going to affect them. I looked at the survey, you guys did a survey, and I think everybody in this town should have got a copy of a survey mailed to them, because that's the only way they're going to know about it. At least it's going to stir interest. They're going to read that and go, what's going on? They want to know further. I've spoken to several people in town from the CAO down, and nobody's giving me any answers. They all tell me it's a proposal. We're not sure exactly what's going to happen. How are we supposed to base what we want to change or not change if you guys don't know what's going on? Nobody seems to give us an answer. It very much looks like it's something contrived that's already in the works, that's been done, it's dealt with. If you go on Twitter right now, there's an advertisement for one of the restaurants. It's not even in existence. We were told by another counselor today that there's no train purchased, but there is a train that's been purchased already. Why would they purchase the train if they didn't know this was already a done deal? Yet one of the counselors answered somebody today and said there's been no purchase of a train, but there has been, because I spoke to the horse's mouth. My point is that this is a big event. This is a big area down there and affects a lot of people. You didn't contact any visitors. You didn't ask visitors. There should have been somebody down there on the long weekend doing a survey of visitors. A lot of those visitors come here every weekend. They spend a lot of money. But nobody's asked it. Nobody's addressed that. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you, Mr. Ordwich. So that moves us then on to delegations, and we have 3 delegations this evening, and the first one is from Jason Wepler and Kevin Zettel, and they're here to talk to us about the Bruce County Safe Communities Committee. Mr. Wepler and Mr. Zettel, oh, they're there.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Inspector Zettel and I are going to share this presentation, and I'm going to let Kevin kick it off.
Alrighty, so we're here to talk about the Southern Bruce Safe Communities Committee. I know there's a lot of people here, and you're anxious to get onto the topic, so we'll keep it down to an hour or less. Just kidding. 30 minutes. I do talk fast, so that's probably not going to be a problem for me. The Southern Bruce County Safe Communities Committee is comprised of local organizations, including police, fire, EMS, public health, and other municipality members who are dedicated to addressing safety concerns in our community. Who's got the clicker? Oh, do we? Yeah, please. So where do we cover? The Southern Bruce County, the Safe Communities, covers Saugeen Shores, Aaron Ellerslie, Brockton, Kincardine, South Bruce, and here in Kinloss. There's also a Bruce Peninsula Safe Communities Committee, which covers North and South Bruce Peninsula. So therefore, all of Bruce County is covered with this committee.
So we just throw in this slide just to show you that we're not operating without guidance. This is a Safe Communities model that guides the work of the Safe Communities designation, and this was a model that was first launched in the U.S. in 1986 and has subsequently been developed or adopted by Parachute Canada and is now operating all across the country. And as you'll see in a couple subsequent slides when we talk briefly about the community safety and well-being plans, this model fairly closely replicates the model that's expected of the ministry through those plans. So I think our committee certainly has a good grasp of part of what that process will look like.
So back in June of 2019, we were designated by Parachute. Parachute's mission is to create a safer Canada by preventing serious and fatal injuries through evidence-based solutions that advocate and educate. Their vision is a Canada free of serious injuries, with Canadians living long lives to the fullest. It was founded in 2012. It promotes researched, evidence-based, and expert advice resources and tools that can help prevent serious harm or death from preventable injuries. The picture on the slide is when we were designated. That was in Walkerton with Mayor Chris Peabody and Jason, and also Linda Neal from Parachute, who presented us with the key to the community. This is the key that we were presented with, and we're going to try to get a spot at the Bruce County building to get it displayed proudly there. During that week, we had 60 grade 1 students from Walkerton School that participated in a variety of interactive safety-related scenarios. So we had, I think, 5 or 6 stations that we went around to and taught the kids safety. It was really well received at that time. It's a 10-step designation process to become designated by Parachute. Now, we've already done that, so I'm not going to labor that issue. But one I'd like to highlight is number 3, to complete a priority setting exercise. We did this, and we focused on 5 priorities that we identified. Those are farm safety, rural vehicle theft, water safety, mental health, and substance use. And then through all those 10 steps, that was what we came up with our committee. That continues on with the steps. The picture you see there that says 5 simple steps to safeguard your vehicle, that's an idea of what we do. The rural areas, not so much in Saugeen Shores, but in the outlying areas, we're really getting hit with vehicle thefts and actually continue to this day. So part of the education process was to educate people on what they can do to pocket their keys and different things to make hopefully reduce these crimes that are very preventable and tie up a lot of resources as well.
So I'm sure Council's well aware and have heard about the community safety and well-being plans that are being mandated by the ministry to come in effect by the end of 2020. The only point I wanted to really make on this front is the process that we've gone through as a Safe Communities Committee, I think will really support the municipality as they undertake these plans. I understand that the county is kind of taking a lead on these plans with support from the lower tier municipalities. I'm also aware that there's a meeting happening on September 27th, and I hope that The municipality has received that invitation to send a representative to the initial planning meeting with the counties and the 17 lower tier municipalities. It would be great to see you there, and I do think that our committee can certainly help the work of the safe community plans, having gone through a very similar process. The planning framework for these plans really takes the focus away from the urgent response. We know that that's very labor intensive and time intensive from a police, EMS, and fire standpoint, and really looking more at the preventative services that we can implement in our communities, making sure everyone has good housing, has access to good mental health services, and those things that really prevent future crime and challenges for individuals in our community. And this is the model that the ministry is expecting each of the lower tier municipalities in Ontario take in developing these plans. And as I referenced earlier, it's very, very similar to the plan that we went through as a Safe Communities Committee in going through the designation process and determining our priority topics that we pursue as a committee. So last but not least, just quickly, our request of council. We're very fortunate to have Inspector Zettel represent Saugeen Shores Police on our committee, but we would like to ask, if possible, that the municipality designate a staff person or an elected official to the committee as well. We meet probably every 6 to 8 weeks, 7 or 8 times a year. We do move those meetings around Bruce County to try and accommodate each of the municipalities, and it would be great to have a representative from the town on that committee. We would also like to be a consulting body as you move through the process of developing your community safety and well-being plan. As I said, I think we have a lot of experience, similar experience to the process that you'll be undertaking in the coming months, and I think we can support that process. Although we don't have any funding requests at this time, I would like to just put the opportunity on the floor. Should we have a funding request in the future, that we could come back and speak to council about that. Currently, we operate on a small budget with a few grant applications that we apply for to pursue any of the work that we're doing. But if the opportunity presents itself to undertake some bigger projects in this community, it would be nice to be able to come back and speak to council again. And we'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Kevin and Jason. You talked about funding. Do you have any direct funding from the province, from the ministry, to support your work?
No, we do not.
Anything further from members of the committee? I don't see anything. So what we'll do with your request, particularly your request to assign somebody from the municipality to join the committee, we'll refer that with committee's consent directly to the striking committee, and they'll come back with a recommendation for this council to consider that request. So we can push that along and take action on that right away. But
thank you.
Other than that, thank you very much. Thank you. And just before we move on, these gentlemen managed to come in despite their threat to be an hour. They came in at 6 minutes and 52 seconds, which was great. And I just want to remind all the deputants that we have 10 minutes for our delegations, just to let you know that in advance. So our next delegation is from Mr. John Mann. Mr. Mann.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm asking this council not to approve their public conduct policy. It's up for grabs tonight. I'm virtually certain it will be passed unanimously with no debate. The public conduct policy was first brought to the attention of this council July 22nd, the last meeting. And it says, if in the town's and the council's sole discretion they consider a citizen, an individual citizen of our town, to be unreasonable, frivolous, or vexatious, they can be banned from this meeting we're having here tonight and various other places. Unbelievable for this council to even consider this. It's a 7-page document. So, unreasonable. And this is, you can ban these citizens who have a fundamental constitutional charter right in our free and democratic society to communicate, meaningfully communicate with each and every one of you, and in a public forum, particularly in a public forum. Yet you're going to decide all to yourselves who's unreasonable and who's not. Every person in the world disagrees with something another person. There's not one of us that agrees with everything anybody says. Just go to a family picnic, and that proves that. But here, council, unreasonable? They don't agree with what council's doing? That must be unreasonable. You can't come in. I've been banned 5 times already. Not because I've been unreasonable, but because, you can only come once every 6 months on the same topic. I thought I was going to be banned tonight. I brought this up last time because it was just and I still might be. And what concerns me more about this is your policy says if you find somebody's unreasonable, you can call 911 and have Officer Settle arrest me. Unbelievable. I have a right, a constitutional right to be unreasonable if I want to with my counsel. There's no criminal activity in unreasonableness. The criminal code covers what you people want. I can't be here and utter threats to you. I can't commit mischief here. I can't commit criminal harassment with you. That's covered by the criminal code. That's the limit that we have on our fundamental right to communicate with our counsel. But here, you're saying, we have to find, hey, this guy's unreasonable. Get out of here. Hey, this guy is frivolous. Get out of here. This guy's vexatious. Get out of here. Frankly, I think this public conduct policy is unreasonable, frivolous, and vexatious. And you should all step down because you're violating that right. I can't say enough bad things about this, and council even considering this. But the worst part about it is none of you brought it up. We elected you to do bylaws, legislate bylaws. None of you brought this up. You know who did? The ombudsman. And you know who the ombudsman is? The ombudsman represents us, the citizens, against you. And here the ombudsman tells our town clerk at a seminar she went to a few weeks ago, this is how you keep your citizens away from you. Get them out of your forum. You don't have to deal with them. Just say they're unreasonable, frivolous, or vexatious. It's the ombudsman who represents us telling you how to get rid of us. Unbelievable. It wasn't you figuring it out. It wasn't you drafting it. Gee, did you campaign on this when you ran? Did you tell the citizens sitting here, hey, how do we keep these people out of here? It's unbelievable. Just shocking. And the other thing is, talk about due process. You find us unreasonable, vexatious, or frivolous, you then, you can have a hearing on this. Who's the adjudicator? You are. The town is. The CAO is. Well, gee, we said this person's unreasonable. Let's have a hearing. Well, I'm going to decide that too. Well, yeah, he's unreasonable. And then the beauty of it all is, who can we appeal to? The ombudsman who told you how to keep us out. Unbelievable. No due process, no nothing. And we can't come here, and you can kick us out at any minute. You can call 911 and have us arrested. Give me a break. And, what you are good at, the clock. Am I getting close to my 10 minutes? Because you'll arrest me on that, probably. And 3 minutes for Mr. Aitchison, who came here specifically to discuss something that's gravely important to him. Unbelievable. He's unreasonable. He doesn't like this proposal. Next, on the 3rd, we'll have a big public forum. Anybody against this thing that's cooked up already? I agree with what's been said. It's a done deal. Anybody against it? Unreasonable. Just check out the website, the last meeting. You'll hear what the comments by the council on that. I don't have enough time to go into all I wrote down in my delegation, but I hope people read that because I think all our government needs changing. I think we ought to have a lottery drawing. Get rid of the right to vote. Just put citizens in a hat. Mr. Smith, you're the next counselor. Mr. Smith, Ms. Jones, you're the next MPP. Get rid of, and only 2 years, one term, no re-election. Get rid of all this power. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely, and that's exactly what we have on this level, provincial and federal. And the thing is, I can only speak to you. I can't go to Toronto or Ottawa and speak to my provincial government or my federal government. If I do, and I talk out loud in the gallery, they'll kick me out. While the members on the floor talk incessantly while other people speak. You will not debate this, I'm certain. You will raise your hand and approve it, I'm certain. And that public policy, conduct policy, will be set in stone here, and not one of you brought it up as a concern. And the criminal code covers anything that could be a problem whatsoever, and that's the only limit. It is unconstitutional on its face, and I ask you to not approve it tonight. We've had enough of this. One time you can come only one time every 6 months, and the other time, hey, if we're in litigation, we can't talk about it. We don't want any citizen talking about it. You're paying our attorneys astronomical fees for nothing. So I ask you to not approve it, and I must be within the 10 minutes. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Okay. That takes us on to our final delegation, which is from Melanie Rice. And is this Councillor Grace? Do you have a comment? Sorry, Councillor Grace? I'm sure. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John, I wanted to respond to you. So I'm speaking for myself. And I'm sure I've been frequently viewed as being a difficult citizen in the past. I understand and agree with your concerns about limitations on citizens' right to free speech and the right to petition. These are precious rights, but I am satisfied that the public conduct policy we have before us to approve tonight does not unreasonably limit these rights. I have to say that before I was elected, and as someone who submitted numerous applications to present delegations to council on a very controversial topic, I was always treated with courtesy and respect by town staff. I agree with you that we as elected officials or as citizens cannot assume what the majority of citizens want if they do not express themselves. You referred to that in your silent majority section of your piece. And that we should strive to permit and encourage that freedom of expression in an appropriate way. At the same time, Canadian constitutional law recognizes that freedoms are not unlimited. Part 1, Section 1 of the 1982 Constitution Act, under the introduction to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, allows the government to pass laws that limit free expression so long as the limits are, quote, reasonable and can be justified in a free and democratic society, end quote. I believe this public conduct policy is reasonable and will only be applied in extreme situations for the following reasons. Number one, if we were to allow citizens to speak in our meetings without any time limit, we would be limiting the time as council that we have to consider all of the other business we must accomplish during our meetings. I myself and all my other colleagues have a 10-minute limit to respond to you. So we are also governed by limits. For instance, tonight's Committee of the Whole agenda is 239 pages long with 28 separate agenda items. Our regular council meeting, which follows, has an agenda which is 45 pages long and 7 agenda items. My point is that we have much business to do in these meetings, and if one citizen was allowed to speak for an unlimited amount of time, we could be here for many hours, impeding our productivity as a council and possibly harming the public good. Number two, the Ontario Office of the Ombudsman recommends that all municipalities adopt public conduct policies so staff can be consistent and fair in their relations with the public. I also agree that there may be a conflict between citizens and staff's perceptions of what actions are reasonable. That's why it's important to have a policy which defines and explains what actions may be unacceptable. For instance, in one's family, it may be customary to scream obscenities at each other during a discussion. One person may be used to that and see nothing wrong with it, but most people accept that this is not accepted civil behavior. Like statutes under criminal law, this policy provides specific definitions and examples of vexatious, frivolous, and/or unreasonable behavior to assist staff in acting without bias and inconsistency, and so that staff actions can be accountable under the law. And finally, regarding the issue of appeals, this policy outlines that the decision to classify an individual's behavior as violating this policy would go through several steps. A review by a manager or director while considering the specific circumstances of the matter, a warning letter sent before restrictions would be imposed, a review date if restrictions are imposed, and then an appeals process within the town and through the Ontario Ombudsman's Office, and I would imagine also to the Supreme Court as well. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, you're out of order, sir. I apologize for not asking for questions or comments from members of the committee. I will ask now. Are there other questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, okay, we'll move on to delegation number 4, and that's from Ms. Melanie Rice, and she's here to talk about the Port Elgin waterfront development. Ms. Rice.
Actually, it is Reist. So, but it's Reist, but teachers and everybody makes that same mistake, but
I apologize.
No problem. Honorable Mayor and council members, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak about the topic of the redevelopment of the public beach in Port Elgin. The purpose of my letter primarily is to advocate for a transparent and public process led by the town. It needs to be robust. We need to vet this plan. We need to understand this plan. It is unprecedented in the history of this community what is being contemplated at this point. Not only the size and scope and the footprint on that beach, but also the contemplated 50-year lease with a single group of partners. My background and why this is so important to me is, as some of the other people have already commented, I've spent every summer of my life on the beach. My first job was scooping ice cream on the beach. I worked up here in between university from May till September and moved in my parents' family cottage during that time. I liked it so much I wanted to secure my future on the beach, and I married somebody from Port Elgin. We bought a cottage 21 years ago. My dad started coming to here as a 16-year-old in 1945. I love this place. It's been a gift to my family. It's been a gift to my kids, and for countless others that continue to come back to this beach. And it's not only seasonal residents, it's people who rent places here, who come as teenagers, they love it, they get married, they come here, they bring their kids here, and now they're enjoying it with their grandchildren. And there are a lot of options for our tourist dollars out there today. People can go to Grand Bend and have a particular experience. They can go to Wasaga Beach and have a particular experience. Sauble Beach, Bayfield. But people keep coming back here. And why is it that they keep coming back here? I think it's because Port Elgin, since tourism started becoming an industry here, has decided to differentiate itself and has wanted to keep it unique. Unique in a way that it is a family-oriented beach in which the natural elements that draw people here in the first place are protected, preserved, and enhanced. It has maintained an attitude of restricting over commercialization on that beach. When people come here, they come to escape their city lives. They come to leave the urban experience behind. They come to have less programmed lives, to unplug, to disconnect, to listen to the wind in the trees, the waves on the sand, and to watch those spectacular sunsets. I think that this project marks a real departure from how the town has viewed that space historically. And I think that's why you've seen some of the very passionate responses that people have to it. Prior to preparing my comments, I thought there might be some wisdom in looking at the August 2013 Waterfront Master Plan. It's comprehensive in scope. It's 100 pages in length. It had broad public consultation and input. I suspect the importance of these documents is because, and no offense intended here, senior managers come and go from municipalities. Elected officials come and go. But the purpose of a document like this is to get the community input, to understand the values and the priorities of the stakeholders that live along and people who come to enjoy the waterfront, and to make sure that there is a document that expresses that is a tool to aid and guide you as you make important decisions that affect our waterfront. I'm just going to mention a couple items from this plan. So in the executive summary at page 2, there's a mission statement that was to guide the committee that put this plan together. And as I understand it, this document built upon at least 2 prior waterfront plans in the 90s. So there's been an extensive period of time and energy and effort from all stakeholders in putting this together. But the mission statement was to enhance the quality of life of Saugeen Shores residents and visitors through the development of a Saugeen Shores waterfront master plan. And how do we determine whether, as a municipality, we're enhancing the quality of life of the people that come to the beach? Well, at page 13, actually 14 of the master plan, there's a heading that says, survey and engage local tourism stakeholders, residents, and visitors. And can I have my water, Melissa? And then underneath that heading are the following comments. Annual surveys should be done at the waterfront, asking our residents and visitors what they want at the waterfront destination zones. And then they present a question. Tell us what you think about the waterfront. I'm not sure if that's been done, if there were annual surveys, but the authors of this master plan felt that in order to gauge whether the town was getting it right and how to be guided in any future builds on that piece of property, it was important to have updated annual feedback from the people who were down and using the waterfront, be they residents, seasonal residents, or visitors. And then the question is, or the statement is made, the survey will ascertain from our customers, and the customers are defined as visitors and residents, what our town can do to meet the visitors and residents' needs and expectations, including what buildings should be going on the beach. The first time, to my knowledge, that a survey or any kind of consultation was initiated with reference to this plan was with the survey that came out the day after Mr. Danini's presentation on July 15th. I was very excited to participate in this survey. Town staff, by the way, has been excellent at providing me with information. I came to the town hall, they brought out the Bristol board so that I could look at it and try and understand what was happening. But I was shocked by the brevity of the survey and the narrow nature of the questions. This is a significant 50-year partnership with a footprint that we've never seen on this beach. 2 of the questions stopped me cold. Number 3, I think it was. What of the following amenities would cause you to visit the beach? And then the amenities listed were what was in Mr. Danini's presentation. And I thought, it's the beach that causes me to go to the beach. The amenities are there to enhance my experience of the beach. How much time do I have left? I want to make sure.
7 minutes, 50 seconds.
2.5 minutes? Okay. So the 4th question was, what of the following amenities would cause you to invite visitors to come to the beach? Same amenities were listed, and I thought, I invite friends. I am a big promoter of Port Elgin. People know of my love and passion for this place. They come for the beach. I'm somewhat skeptical about the results of the survey, because if you were following the master plan, this survey would have been done at the waterfront. It would have been speaking to people who were at the waterfront with open-ended questions that said, tell us what you think about the waterfront. And that's a quote in your master plan. And that was not the question in the survey. So here is a very quick list in terms of the town. And the other thing is, when I've asked questions of the town people, I've been directed to Mr. Danini. You are fiduciaries of this most precious, significant asset. You have a duty under the Municipal Act to make evidence-based decisions. And you need to understand all of the details and ramifications of a project, particularly that's going to be a 50-year partnership, potentially. What is the scale and measurements of this project? None are included in the drawings. It is not possible to determine the size or footprint of the buildings or their elevation. What record do the investors have in this type of development? It's an environmentally sensitive space. It's a gift to this community. What record do these developers have? Has the town researched other public-private ventures in like-sized municipalities to determine their experiences? Are there other municipalities that are currently entering into 50-year commitments? Is there data to support the need for a banqueting convention space that will draw an additional 300 people and multiple more vehicles down to our beach when we have 3 golf courses, the CAW camp, and the racquetball club? Is there a basis for creating a self-contained village versus some other smaller scale, such as an additional eating option along the lines of the Whitefish Grill that is proposed? What's going to happen with the Harbor Light? What's going to happen with the gazebo and the band shell? Seniors come down on Sunday nights and sit in their parked cars to listen to music and to see the sunset. In the current model, where are they going to go? If the project goes ahead, what are the increased infrastructure costs for taxpayers in terms of roads to accommodate a 300-person banqueting facility? The recent survey on the master plan for traffic indicated it was a value of this municipality to encourage pedestrian and cycling to the beach and not vehicles. Well, there's no escaping. People are going down to weddings and conventions. They're going to be in cars. They're not cycling down there. What does that do to the traffic patterns there? I can't even understand from the drawing what's going to happen with Green Street, what's going to happen with Elgin Street and Mill Street, thank you. And what kind of costs are there going to be? I think it's been 50 or 60 years since there's been a facility at the beach that is a year-round facility. What does that mean in terms of HVAC systems, in terms of toilets, in terms of all kinds of things? Has there been an environmental study done? Has there been a feasibility study done? But lastly, it's a family-friendly beach. I'm not sure if we've canvassed who are actually on those towels, but I suspect most of them are there with their family looking for affordable options to walk into restaurants in bathing suits and flip-flops and grab a burger. These people aren't going to have the resources to be spending a lot of money on lunches. All right, I think I'm done, right?
11 after
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. So, thank you, Ms. Reist. Just ask members of the committee if they have questions or comments for Ms. Reist. I'll just point out, as you have already mentioned, a number of you have already mentioned, we do have our public meeting on this topic coming up on the 3rd, and we'll be hearing a presentation, obviously, from Mr. Danini, but also from municipal staff. And the survey results will be presented in detail, and there will also be the opportunity for any member of the public who wishes to speak to council and express your views to do so. We will have the 3-minute time limit because we expect quite a few people will want to speak to us about it, which is great. But we really encourage all of you to come out on the 3rd and hear some more detail and speak to council on the subject. So. Thank you very much, and that is the end of our delegations, and we do not have a public meeting, so that moves on to reports of municipal officers and committees, and we go down to 7.3, infrastructure and development, and we have a staff report on the water system financial plan, and we'll turn it over to the Director of Infrastructure and Development for the report.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, I just would like to highlight that I have Mr. Dave Burnside from COBIDE, who authored the report, here to help with any of your questions. So when they come up, I'll invite Mr. Burnside up to the podium to help. I won't take it personally that nobody is interested to hear about our water rates. So the town engaged COBIDE Engineering to prepare both our water and wastewater plans. Just get closer to your mic. Closer? So thank you. I'll give you a second too. Yeah. So thank you, and again through you. The town engaged COBIDE Engineering to prepare both our water and wastewater financial plans. So I'm going to address both reports at the same time instead of repeat myself on the two. These plans are summaries of the analysis that COBIDE and our staff have done to look at the revenues and expenses within the two systems, water and wastewater, and to understand what is needed to operate both those systems for the next 6 years. These are living documents, and they will be reviewed annually as part of our capital works programs and within the budget to make sure that they are up to date and update the tables based on what we do every year. The purpose of these reports is to make sure that the system is financially stable. So highlights from the reports include that we are seeing reduced revenue due to reduced consumption. We feel that this is in part because it is basically metered, and as well because of low flow fixtures and water conservation measures. We note that the planned capital projects are scheduled to fit into the financial plan based on need, our asset management plan, and how we can financially afford to fit them in. This plan will then form an input back into our 5-year capital programs. It is not binding on council. By agreeing to accept these reports, it does not mean that you have to buy that one item that's in the table in year 2021. It is a best practice, and the recommendations coming out of it are things that staff will continue to advance. Staff proposed an 8% rate increase every year, and this is how we were able to fit the capital and operational programs into the financial plan to show that we are not borrowing new money and we are not going into deficit after the 6 years. It is recommended coming out of this report that we review the rates and do a rate study report to bring back to you. This would allow us to compare our rates to other neighboring municipalities who are experiencing the same reduction in consumption and the same stress of infrastructure deficits. This will also make sure that the rates that we are applying are fair and equitable. And if that rate study comes back with a different recommendation, we would bring that back to council at that time. We're hoping to get this work done so we can continue with the 8% increase proposed during the 2020 budget deliberations. So with that, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation. I'll read it and we can take questions or comments from the committee. It's recommended that Council adopts the Water System Financial Plan for the period of 2019 to 2023 and authorizes staff to proceed in 2019 with a water rate study review in conjunction with a wastewater rate study review to be completed in 2020. Questions or comments from members of the committee? We'll start with Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the report, Amanda. So the water systems that we're talking about, the wastewater and water treatment systems, are funded through rates charged for water. And that has been the practice in this municipality for a long time, except for the last project, putting up the tower, where we used $400,000 of gas tax revenue, which was gas tax revenue that was earmarked for projects that were designed to benefit all the residents of Saugeen Shores, and in this case they were used for things that benefit only the people who are hooked up to water and sewer. So going forward, I like the idea that we're going to have an annual 8% rate increase that should, extrapolate it out, be able to fully fund the system through water charges. My question then is, and I think later on in our agenda we see a financial report that indicates that there are actually surpluses being generated in areas, and I think one of them maybe even be in the water system. Can we get some sort of assurance that that $400,000 that we took out of gas tax revenues could be replaced, so that that funding could be used for other projects in the community that would benefit all residents of Saugeen Shores? And the people that I'm talking about are rural residents that are on well and sewer, septic, and even some people in our smaller communities around that aren't on water. So that's the question. Can we be assured that we'll pay that money back at some point?
Thank you for the question. And 3, Mr. Mayor, we do not have that as a budget in this financial plan, repayment of that money. That gas tax one-time fund was used seen as an opportunity to help fund the water tower that came in at a price that was not affordable to the town. So currently in this system, that is not contemplated.
Further comments? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I would just, in response to my respected colleague, just point out that the water that is available through the water tower is not just for private homes, but it's also used for restaurants, where it's used for this facility where we drink coffee and water when we're at our meetings, and so there is an element of public good that $400,000 is used towards, in my opinion. I also wanted to just compliment Dave and say hello and thank you for these excellent reports. I never expected when I started reading them that I was going to find them actually very interesting, but they were very well written, and I learned a lot, and thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just thanks David for your report, and Amanda, and welcome back to the council chambers, Mr. Burnside. It's good to see you. And did great work here. And is it fair to assume that the 8% increase every year, will this report help to determine if that 8%, is that what we're saying, that the 8% is in fact the right number? Is that one of the intentions of the report, is to determine if the 8%, how many years was that for? I guess I wasn't quite clear. Is it for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? What did we agree to back at the last budget?
The 8% is intended for the duration of this study, but it can be changed any time through your fees and charges yearly.
Right.
But based on the construction project council or staff wants,
okay,
it's 8% to fund that in total revenue. So 8% increase is meant to be total revenue source. And if you get funding, that's a bonus. If you get some other or find another source within the water or sewer system, that would reduce the actual total amount to get to an 8% of revenue increase to fund the projected projects, mostly capital projects.
Okay, and thank you for that. And in one section of the report talks about 80 new homes per year. I'm assuming that was the average from 2013 to 17, 18. Another section of the report reads 185 new building starts. So, what we've seen is obviously an uptrend.
Certainly is. There's so many information reports coming in or data sources of projecting the future. So what we try to do is look at a number of them, and some are 85 and some are 100, but we went back to the real flows leaving the water plant and trying to base what we think the projected flows were going forward, because that's the main, not a main basis, but a part of the basis of the total funding we get from the rates. Some are fixed, and that's the capital cost, and also they're volumetric, so they're based on the flows of that year.
I see.
So it's kind of a base of trying to find out what we think in the end the water rates will be.
Okay, but the basis for the report, Dave, was on that average of 85 homes, and then the number I'm seeing here is 185. So we've seen big increase in the last couple of years, correct?
Yes.
With homes, so that will have an impact on the outcome the numbers contained in this report, obviously, if we're looking at the 180.
Very little, but because of the daily use of the water per person is not fluctuating the same, it's going down, and that's what most people are finding.
Okay.
So we're looking more at the water flows that are being consumed to try to crystal ball the future.
I got you.
And it's certainly not exact science, because at some point demographics may change. People may start using more water.
Got you.
But people haven't found that just because of the efficiencies and the conservation initiatives. And it's a good news story, but not a great news story, because municipalities like yours are finding shortfalls in the funding.
Just before I close, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Burnside again back to 2009 when he got that shoreline trail built. That was a good project, so thank you, Dave.
List all of Dave's accomplishments. We could be here all night. Further questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, when you talk about an 8% rate increase, and I don't get a water bill, so I don't know how much that is. How much is that on the average household bill? What dollar value are we adding? Are we adding $200 a year? Are we adding $500 a year? How does that work out to be on an annualized basis?
So the project or the document's not really saying 8% per rate. It's saying 8% in total revenue to fund these projects. Now, most of it is coming from the water rates, and about now, because of the decrease in the volumetric, it's about 60% fixed cost, your capital, and it's about 40% volumetric. And that was higher volumetric in past years, but because the water rates are going down, or the consumption's going down, that figure's also going down. Very little, though, based on the 150 homes or 185 homes that might come in any one year. You're not really seeing that same amount of volume per household that you used to years ago, because everybody was consuming a lot more water. And as you get bigger and bigger, more homes don't necessarily increase the same. If you went 3% of your household base and added that every year, you don't always get the same. Yeah, and that's what a rate study might do. You might say, okay, we have to look at a different funding formula to try to be fair and equitable to everybody to get the same amount of money to fund the capital project.
Turn your mic on there, Dave. Sorry.
When we do a tax increase, we say it works out to $200 for the average household based on an assessed value of $235,000 or whatever the figures are. I'm just trying to get a idea in my head, because people are maybe looking at a 6% rate increase annually for the next number of years that this study covers. Just an idea in my head how much that's going to hit people in the pocketbooks, because we have people who are presumably just getting by now with the raising costs of housing and things.
That's what one of the things this rate study will look at, if council considers it, is a different way to try to combat the people that are most vulnerable to a rate increase, where you actually price in blocks of water usage, and the first part is the least expensive, because usually that demographics would use less water. So that demographics will pay if certain scenario is that they'll pay less as a current water meter. So but I don't have those figures exactly, because it all depends on the size of your water meter and your
instead of it being a same rate all the way through for every cubic meter of water you use, the first so many cubic meters will be at one rate, and then the more you use, the higher it gets.
Yes.
All right.
To try to help the people that are most vulnerable to a rate increase.
Right.
Yes.
For apartment people and things like that. If you're living in an apartment, presumably you'd use less water than if you're watering lawns and things like that in a household.
Right. Or if you are, your water bill is a lot, then you use less water. Right. And if everybody uses less water, you get to the same point we are today, that it's maybe not funding the capital project enough to make it a sustainable system. And that's what the financial plan is, try to get sustainable system and fair and equitable to everyone too.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments from members of the committee? Well, thanks very much for this report. I think one thing for sure it's an 8% increase, but I would say that as a commodity, of all the commodities you buy in your life, the water is coming to you at a pretty good price. I mean, you're getting a pretty good deal for clean, reliable water every day, on demand. And so it's, I think that, we have to maintain the system at a level where we can continue to guarantee that. And this report helps us to ensure that we do that. So it's a good report. I would also point out, though, and I know that Amanda had said in her report that this is to a certain extent optional going forward. But I think a caveat to that would be, the council has a pretty high level of responsibility to maintain the system in good working order. And we have a report here that lays out recommendations to do that, developed by a professional. And so council, I think, and councils going forward would be strongly advised to implement this plan. And if we are not going to implement it, to have some pretty good reasons why we didn't, because this is the plan for how we're going to do it, and we'd be wise to stick to it as best we can. So with that, we have the recommendation. You've heard it. I'll ask all in favor. Opposed? That's carried. All right, so that moves on to the second one, the wastewater system financial plan, and the Director of Infrastructure and Development.
So it's a repeat of my previous report, because they are basically the same. The only difference is the water financial plan has to be put on the books with the province every 6 years, whereas the wastewater one is not regulated to be done.
Okay, so there's a recommendation. I'll read it. We can take questions or comments. It's recommended that Council adopts the wastewater system financial plan for the period of 2019 to 2023 and authorizes staff to proceed in 2019 with the wastewater rate study review as recommended in the financial plan to be completed in 2020. Questions or comments from the committee? I don't see any. Another good report, and I think it's also important to point out that this, as you noted, as the director noted, this is not a mandated or required report, one that we've opted to do to ensure that we're also managing this system to the highest possible standard and in a way that's predictable, and so our funding for it is steady and stable, and we can maintain excellent wastewater service for everybody in the municipality who is on wastewater. So, you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Burnside. So that moves us then on to report number 3, a staff report on pre-budget approval for a Viking snowplow, and the Director of Infrastructure and Development.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we're here looking for your approval to get a jump start on ordering the snowplow for the 2019-2020 winter. We believe that if we order it now, we'll make sure that we have the snowplow available to us before November 1st. This is an additional plow. It's not replacing any of our existing system. It is solely to be able to add a new plow route on so that we can take on the new roads from the new developments, which in the last 5 years has totaled 50 kilometers.
Okay, there's a recommendation. Then we can take questions or comments. It's recommended that Council authorize staff to single-source purchase a single-axle plow truck from Viking Civis as part of the 2020 capital budget, funded out of the development charges reserve. Questions or comments from members of the committee? We'll start with Councillor Schreier.
Thank you, and through you. Just a question, I guess, for the director with regards to why it would be single-sourced and not tendered.
Thank you, and through you, all of our other plows with the snow equipment are done through Viking. Their Public Works had brought a report forward to council many years ago asking that we could single source to have the same equipment on these wings, so I'm just carrying that through.
Good. Thank you.
And the Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, Amanda, this is something that we also talked about earlier in the year where we pre-approved the hiring of somebody to drive this in the fall, did we not?
Thank you. Through you, yes, that's correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Further questions or comments from members of the committee? Councillor Schreier.
Sorry, I had one more. Through you, just in the report, it noted that the plow and operator would be financed through development charges. So our staff's time, are we allowed to or permitted to charge staff time under the development charges? Can we use those funds for that?
Sorry, and no, the operator comes out of the operations budget. That's in that budget, but the plow itself, the physical piece, comes from DC's. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that the funding for that operator was approved in the 2019 budget. That's correct. Yeah. So, is there anything further? Seeing none, you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That's carried. All right, that moves us on to the final infrastructure and development report, a staff report on connecting link funding for the Railway Street Culvert. The director.
Thank you, and through you. This is a good news story. We've applied for this funding for 3 years, and we finally were successful in getting $315,000 from MTO to fund a $350,000 project. So it was not in the 2019 budget because we didn't expect to receive the funding, but we did. And so now we're looking at borrowing from the roads reserve $20,000 to get us through to 2020, where then we'll bring that report for that $20,000 to be paid back into the roads reserve, and that would be through some funding such as gas tax or OCIF funding, taxation, or I'm not sure any other options that way. That's what we're looking for tonight. So thank you.
So there's a recommendation that council authorize staff to enter into an agreement with BM Ross through a single source quotation to provide engineering services in the amount of $20,000 plus allowances of $8,500 for the Railway Street Culvert design, approval, and tender documents. That the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the contribution agreement with the province, and that the town's expense incurred in 2019 be funded from the road reserve. Questions or comments from the committee? No, this is, as you said, a good news story, and we've had some success in the last little bit with getting funding from the province of Ontario, which is very positive for our community. So you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so that moves us on to Community Services, Parks and Recreation reports, and the first report is a staff report on the location of Aquatic Recreation Center and the Director of Community Services.
Thank you. This evening's staff is looking for approval to deem the community complex as the desired location for an aquatic center. This location continuously is the preferred location as identified in 3 previous professional consultant reports. Excuse me. The rationale for this location are many. It is the lowest development cost. It's the reuse of the waste heat from the cube systems has potential savings. It's the lowest estimated operating cost. It's the lowest estimated maintenance cost. It has existing infrastructure here. Potential co-programming opportunities and partnership opportunities exist. It's a high-profile central location, and it's along the recreational trail, which promotes active transportation. The approval of the recommendation permits staff to take the next steps for a site-specific master plan that will take into account the many questions that we all have in regards to designating this site. Working with the YMCA, we now have narrowed the space needs, and it is time to advance a site-specific master plan. A plan such as this will paint many perimeters. It could certainly look at the size of the facility, it could look at the need for a second arena, and it could certainly look at the existing municipal space as a few examples. It really takes our request to the next level. Funds have already been allocated for plans such as this, and staff would continue to the next phase. Selecting a site is critical in moving this project forward. The Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program will be launched on September the 3rd. Ensuring Saugeen Shore's application is complete is crucial. Identifying a preferred location for a new facility, as well as a solid business plan and potential partners, is the anchor to having a firm proposal ready for funding sources. Staff have a very narrow application window with closing in mid-November. A combined solid business plan that includes a solid location will be an attribute to success. I remind Council that selecting a desired location does not commit to a YMCA construction at this time, but does focus the location for a future aquatic recreation center. Approval of this recommendation will assist staff in moving to the next step of critical space allocation and amenities. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the recommendation, then we'll take questions or comments from the committee. It's recommended that council direct staff to proceed with advancing the Aquatic Recreation Center business plan and funding application based on the community complex as the preferred location. Questions or comments from members of the committee? The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I'd like to speak in regard to the staff report before us tonight. 2 years ago, Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt and myself attended the AMO conference in Ottawa, where we had a conversation with staff from the Minister of Infrastructure. At that time, they told us to get ready because the window for investing in the Canada Infrastructure Program, Culture and Recreation Stream, will be opening very soon. We came back to Council and reiterated what we had been told. We asked that staff begin to prepare for this opportunity. This past Monday, we found out that the infrastructure funding was opening in September and would close in November. We are now forced to cram or jam, whatever you want to call it, to create an application that we have known was coming for the past 2 years. Tonight, we've been asked to accept a staff report that asks us to accept the east side of the Plex as the preferred site for our new pool and recreation complex. I cannot accept this report at this time, and let me give you the reasons why, and then once everybody has spoken, I have a couple solutions to offer. To begin, let me repeat two very famous lines from two very influential people. Mr. Mayor, as the late Dr. Martin Luther King once said, I have a dream. I have a dream where I live in a community that is active and healthy, a community where facilities or the lack thereof are not a question, a community where people are active, young and old, a community that is the envy of all communities around. Now, like the great musician John Lennon once said, I imagine all the people playing in one place. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will all join us and this community will play as one. 5 years ago, I was elected by the people of Southampton. I ran on a recreation reform platform. The people of Southampton knew who I was and what I did, and they knew that I would work for their best interests of the community. My background in recreation and athletics is diverse. I'm a teacher, a coach, and a participant. I am more involved in athletics than most people. Through my involvement, I talk to people and listen to what they have to say. I have traveled all over the province playing at different facilities. Because of my involvement, I am fortunate to be able to see the big picture. That is, I look at not just the needs of one sport at a time, but all sports and activities together, and try to place the needs of all participants into a plan. Last October, the people of Saugeen Shores believed in this vision and they re-elected me. The plan before us is good, but it needs a little work. In the report presented to us tonight, it states, the potential twinning of the arena at the Plex is many years out, likely decades, based on projected need. I do not believe this. For the last 4 years, I've been telling Council what is happening with the number of children registered in our public schools. We have a boom happening in Saugeen Shores. We're an anomaly in the province. Our schools are over capacity, which means that there are more children participating in sports than any study could have predicted. In fact, from this year's minor hockey registration, there's a waiting list for players to register in the novice, Adam, Pee-wee, and Bantam teams. No child should ever be on a waiting list to play. There's a need for more ice. This doesn't even take into account the growing numbers of participants in figure skating, the Lakeshore Hockey League, the Winterhawks, and all our other rentals. Mr. Mayor, we have teams that cannot get ice here and must go to neighboring communities to get the ice they require to practice and to play games. How many here tonight have had their own children or know of others that have had to travel to other communities to get ice? We will need a second ice pad attached to the Plex sooner than expected. This past Tuesday, Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt, Councillors Grace, Smith, and myself made a deputation to the staff from the Minister of Infrastructure. One of the takeaways from our meeting was the fact that one of the major criteria for our application to be successful was the comment that we must have a workable business plan. At this point in time, we do not have a workable business plan. We don't even know if we will be partnering with the Y or are we going to do this project on our own. I cannot make a decision tonight if I do not know what the business plan is. It would not be responsible of us to do so. The report also lists 4 potential sites for our new facility. It does not mention the recently purchased Lamont Sports Park. Imagine the complex we could create combining all our new ball facility with the pool and rec center. We have the land. This would be an ideal location. We could combine the ball complex as part of our grant application. And there are other spaces that could be used or acquired that would be exceptional as well. This is going to be the largest project this town has ever undertaken. It will affect everyone for the next 40 years. I want the decision we make to be the right one, not a rushed one. I'm not an engineer, a planner, or a designer, nor do I pretend to be. However, there are several issues that need to be addressed before a decision is made. The first deals with the backup generator. Where will it go? What is the cost of relocating the generator? The second issue deals with the ground source heating system that is located in the field to the south of the Plex. According to the 2017 pool location review, the east side of the Plex has problems. Will we be able to develop in that area with the heating system there? If we are not, where do we put the parking that could potentially be located there? There are many more questions about configurations. Will it fit in the space? What about expanded municipal offices if needed? Where will they go? And most important of all, our second ice pad. Is there space for it? The final issue that needs to be dealt with are the discussions that need to be had with our neighboring businesses. We need to have a meaningful discussion with the affected businesses. We need to be open and transparent as to what is occurring. We have not yet had those discussions, and this is yet one more reason why I will not be accepting the report as presented tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions from members of the committee? Councillor Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this recommendation tonight. It's my belief that for the reasons outlined in the report, and for the reason of that was mentioned, the one that stands most out to me is the clustering. The clustering of the facilities. I think having the proposed aquatics and recreation facility attached to what we already have here as a recreation facility just makes a lot of sense. That if people could come here and drop their kids off to play hockey, and then while the kids are under the tutorship of other adults playing hockey or learning to play hockey, they could go into the pool and have a swim and a workout. It just seems to be the most logical place. Not having them remote. Most areas, most municipalities, most towns, when they put these things together, they have clusters. Just like we talked about with the splash pad a year and a half ago when we were contemplating its location. It's in a cluster of recreational activities. And so for that reason, I think that this makes the most sense. It makes an energy sense. I think the technical issues that were outlined by the deputy mayor are valid ones, but I think that they can all be overcome with proper technical expertise and engineering, and I think there's enough room here for both the pool and recreation facility and the nice pad. We have a lot of space that's currently being underutilized that could potentially be developed for all of those things in the future. And for that reason, I will be voting in favor of this report.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments from members of the committee? The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to say that, the rec complex is probably, from what I can see with numbers I've looked at, still 2, 3, 4 years away. Our legacy fund is growing, but I don't think our legacy fund is going to be at the $10 million mark for another 3, 4, 5 years. You take a $10 million legacy fund, and with $5 million in fundraising, that's $15 million. And borrowing costs, the room we have with debenturing, I think we have less than $10 million. So I mean, you look at the numbers. I think it's going to be difficult to get there in the next few years with what I'm looking at, unless we're successful with provincial federal grants. But nevertheless, why I'm illustrating the numbers is the fact that I haven't yet seen the business plan from the Family Y, and I can't tonight support a Plex site as the preferred site without seeing the Y business plan. I wish we had seen that 3, 4, 5 months ago, had time to dissect it, see what the numbers look like. Are we, is it 20 million, 25 million, 30 million? Are we able to build this facility in the next 3, 4, 5 years? When can we pay for it? So I can't really, with good conscience, approve a site that I really don't know what we're building. And I've done my own work with Grey County Mapping, Bruce County Mapping, with some help. The Lone Sound Family Y is on 6.4 acres. That's a 40,000 square foot facility. We would probably be requiring less than that. I'm assuming around 30,000 square feet. My numbers may not be totally accurate, but they're on 6.4 acres. Take away a little bit of parking space for the arena over there, 0.4, you're down to about 6 acres of land. We have about 4 acres out back. And so that 4 acres is due to the fact that we've got some piping at the south end of the building with 3 wells, and I've been informed by the person that put the ice cube system in, a refrigeration plant, that you can't build over top of it. I heard comment today from a staff member that perhaps you can. Well, I heard from the developer of the ice complex that you can't build over top of those 3 wells, which takes away another half an acre. I just think we're trying to pound a square peg into a round hole. I'm not sure this site here is big enough for a, quote, Y model. And I just need to see the numbers. I don't know whether it's 30,000 square feet or 40,000 or 50,000 square feet. I mean, there's roads to put in, there's lighting to be put in, there's parking to be put in, and I'm just not convinced that this site is big enough. But again, I'm not an engineer either, but I do know enough that I've seen the size of other Ys in the province and the square footage they take from a landmass standpoint and what they need for parking and lighting, and I just am not convinced it's here. Back in 2016-17 when they did the site analysis, the Y wasn't even mentioned. We were talking about a pool and a walking track. Now we're potentially talking about adding on to a fitness facility and a gymnasium, which takes a whole lot more space. And we didn't own the Lamont Sports Complex back then either. And now we do. So I just think it's we waited 13 years for this facility. And people say, oh, another study, another report, another $25,000 for a consultant. Do we have to spend $25,000? Look, we have a couple staff and a couple council, a couple members of the public sit down for 2 or 3, 4, or 5 meetings and hammer it out. Can we develop Lamont Sports Complex that we own? Maybe we can. Maybe it is a good idea to have 8 ball diamonds out there with a rec complex all in one area and room for expansion. Maybe we should leave this site for a second ice pad someday. In 1999, 2000, this facility was built. In the drawings, it calls for a twin pad. I've got a copy of the sketch at home. I ran it off from the building plans. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor talked about the growing numbers. We've got wait lists in some of the divisions. Teams traveling out of town. I at one point think we didn't need a third ice pad in this community. My opinion's changed. We're going through a growth spurt in this community. We're going to 18 to 20,000 people, by the year 2030. From 11,000 when I arrived here 17 years ago, it's almost double. So I just think we need to take a step back, take another look at, can another site be developed? Let's get the Y business plan in front of us and see what we're building, and then make an informed decision from there on. So those are my comments.
You, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, and through you, I would just like to comment that we've spoke a lot this evening about what we are not. We are not engineers and we are not planners, and I would like to just speak on what we are. And we are elected officials who were put here to make decisions on behalf of the people that we are here to represent. And I think that it is prudent for us to take the time that we need and get the answers that we need to make a decision that is in the best interest of the public. So I can speak confidently that I sat in those meetings with the ministry, and certainly what I heard was that it is indeed an attribute to success for the application that we would have a site selected, but it is not indicative that it would be the only possibility, and that it is within our reach of this application to submit with a solid business plan. And as Vice Deputy Mayor has stated, that is something that we simply haven't seen, and we're eager, willing, and anxious to see and work with staff to find an appropriate business plan and an appropriate business model that will work for the members of this community. Thank you.
Any further questions from members of the committee? Councillor Schreider.
Thank you, and through you, I won't go on for too long, just because I think that everybody has. I don't want to repeat what others have said, but I don't support this report at this time either. I do think that things have changed dramatically in the community since the site selection. The Plex has become the preferred site. I do believe that we will require a second ice pad. A third ice pad in the community. It would probably be best suited at the second here, because we know we won't probably see that at the Coliseum. And again, to reiterate as well about, it's very hard to approve a location when we don't have the business plan. So I think that if we approve this tonight and we selected this space, that I don't think that we would be I think that we'd be landlocking ourselves, and I don't think that then that would have that we would be able to develop this place and this parcel of land for future development either. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Rich.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. The one thing I know about this group is that we do have a shared common goal, or that a lot of people on this council do. Many of us ran on the idea of taking this project that's now 15 years, if not longer, in the running, and trying to push it forward. My concern is that if we shut this down today and vote no, that then we'll find ourselves in a situation where we'll push this project back. My hope has always been that we would be the group that would be able to get it done. Agreed with other members that, you know, the way it sits right now, I'm not sure that it fits. But as it's been said, I'm not an engineer, but I see different parts of our parcel. I see a BMX track that could be moved, or we could use that space. I see other business owners or other land that we could try and find ways of acquiring. We could come up with creative solutions in order to try and make this parcel work, because I think there are a lot of good things going on here, and maybe a lot of questions that need to be answered. So my hope is that we don't exactly shut it down, but come up with a way. And I guess I'll have a question. My question would be to you, Jane. What's the time frame for a business plan? And if we, for example, deferred this for, say, 2 council meetings, would we at that time be able to have some of the questions answered that some of the council members need answered in order to go forward? Because when I'm not really a mathematician, but I can quite clearly see that this probably won't go through as it stands.
The business plan isn't going to tell you if it can fit on the site. The business plan is going to give you a solid operating plan moving forward with a facility on this site. There is a solid foundation in the development of the business plan at this point. I've been working regularly with Gail at the Y. And if you're asking for a business plan to come forward in the next September, October, you'll certainly see something in front of this council.
CAO just wants to make a quick...
Can I just follow through?
John?
So is it possible that if we deferred this motion for 1 month, 30 days, to the second council meeting in September, that we could have a business plan before us at that time, and then be able to move forward? So right now I see a lot of people with questions, and I'm wondering if deferring the acceptance of this report may help to answer some of them and still have us in a position to be able to get our application in on time.
It doesn't help the business plan, to be honest. The business plan is based on location, and as I've indicated tonight in the report, there's a number of amenities that benefit having the facility attached to this facility. And therefore, we'll take that into consideration when developing the entire business plan. If council is wishing that the facility is not at this facility, then we go back and start reviewing the business plan, and it becomes a standalone facility. It does impact the budget.
If I defer this for 30 days tonight, is it possible that we could have a business plan and an opportunity to answer some of those questions in the next 30 days?
The CAO speak
I'm sorry, I want to jump in. I sense some members of council frustration. I can share with you that staff feel the same frustration. What we're being asked to do is nearly impossible. It's deliver a business plan with a potential but maybe not partner at a site or maybe not site, a standalone. There's 15 variables that we're being asked to develop in a short period of time. So it would be beneficial if council could give us some clear direction, particularly on the Y partnership. You know, that's something that's a very large variable. And if the Plex is not a location that you're interested in, because I believe it was our preferred location, then we'll start over looking at somewhere else. The Lamont Sports Park, the sanitary costs will be, I expect, will be very, very high. It'll be a standalone facility. I've heard comments tonight that maybe we don't have a fitness center, maybe we do. So there's so many variables. My sense is that we're probably looking at an intake in 2022 if we continue to kind of go around. So we do need some specific direction. We want you to be happy with the work that we do, but I can tell you there's far too many variables to do anything with any real meaning.
So go to Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we passed the current committee structure, one of the things that was an advantage of that kind of system was that we would be able to mobilize a small group of people to work on a specific focus project. And, I read through and went back and looked through the 2017 pool location study, and that study talks about a natatorium. It talks about several pools and a walking track. It doesn't talk about a fitness center. Our meeting with the Minister of Infrastructure made clear that the more services we're able to provide, the better chance we'll have of getting that grant approved or getting some money. And so, I think we do need to look at the option of a rec center. But what I was hoping is that if we could have a deferral and we could have a committee that is focused, and maybe that you go away and you just spend all day Saturday, or those people are devoted to the whole weekend and they're just going to pound this stuff out, and we do a cost-benefit analysis of that's objective, that is looking at the different sites, and we come back and say this is what this committee is recommending. I would like to see something like that happen. Thank you.
I might just speak to that just for a second. I think we have to be really cognizant of, the fact that would have to be a staff-led process, right? We would need staff to be involved in that. Staff have a lot of obligations at the moment, a lot of large projects that we're asking them to deliver. A lot of work has been done on this over a number of years, delivering a number of reports. So they have delivered a fairly substantial recommendation here, backed up by a lot. I think if we're going to reject this site, we need a more fulsome site selection process than something quick. I think we need to do it right. I also think that before anything gets launched, a process needs to come back to this council to be approved before it starts, because I want every member here to be fully on side with whatever approach we're taking, so that when the result comes, people can feel that the process worked and that they can support whatever the outcome is, so we're not back here again. So I'm very reticent to support a quick solution to this. I know that's what everybody wants, but if people are going to say that they don't want this site, I think we need to have a fulsome and well-organized review of all potential locations that are available beyond this one, and that's going to take time. And just realistically, given all that's going on, that's going to take more than just a few weeks. That's going to take a matter of a number of months. I just think I just want to put that on the table to be clear. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I think it's realistic to expect that we could have some sort of scenarios built and put forward. I don't believe I'm incorrect in saying no one has yet to say they were opposed to this site, but rather that they need confirmation that what is being proposed will in fact fit on this site, the Plex. And without confirmation of the size and scope of the project, and I understand CAO's concerns regarding partnership or not partnership, and what that scope in fact looks like. So I simply suggest, and I agree with my colleague Councillor Grace, that a scenario building and a total cost of ownership is what is required. And respectfully, Mayor, I disagree that it can't be done in a reasonable amount of time. I don't think we need a thorough, detailed, but rather a high-level scenario scope that specifies the options that are available and what those might look like. So I think that's a reasonable request, and I hope you'll agree.
Thank you for your comments. Did you have a comment, the CAO?
Yeah, and thank you for that, Councillor Smith. And I think that's really what staff are looking for, that direction to say, hey, go ahead with these parameters. Go ahead with the partnership, because we know that's important. We've worked with the Y. We're close on a business model. It's predicated on a location here. If council wants us to include other parameters, can we make the site work with a second arena? Then we can go through that exercise on a timely basis. You heard the vice deputy mayor say we can't build on wells. I'm not an engineer, either is he. We need to speak with an engineer, and there's a lot of questions like that. The deputy mayor had a lot of questions. We have those same questions, but we need to, if we're serious about applying in this intake, we need to focus our efforts between now and then.
Deputy Mayor.
I thought I'd give everybody a chance to speak, but we're going around in circles. To begin with, I'd like to make a motion that we defer until September 23rd meeting, giving staff enough time to answer those questions that we've asked tonight. It's not that we want to turn this down, but we have questions, and we can't make a decision until those questions are answered. So at this point, I'd like to make that motion.
So there is a motion. It's been moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Schreider. It's resolved that Council defer the decision to place the new aquatic recreation facility on the east side of the Plex property until the September 23rd Council meeting, which will allow staff the required time to answer the series of concerns that members of Council have at this time. These concerns are: will we have the Y business plan in time to help make this decision? 2, can a parking lot be placed at the south end of the Plex property, or will the parking interfere with the underground wells located at this location? Pre-existing report says no, question mark. 3, will construction at this location interfere with the ground source heating pipes that are buried at this location and feed the police building? Does the NII have plans to install an alternative heat source? 4, looking at the square footage of the Owen Sound Y, do we have enough space to locate a facility of similar size in this space? 5, if the municipal offices need to expand in the near future, where will they expand into? 6, what will happen with the municipal parking lot on the east side? Where will staff park? 7, if a second ice pad is needed at the Plex sooner than later, where will it be located? 8, the emergency generator, where will it be located and what will the cost be to move it? 9, have the local businesses that will be affected by this proposed development been contacted to discuss what is happening and possible options? So there's the resolution. Questions or comments to that resolution? So the CAO is suggesting that in the opening paragraph, be it resolved that Council defer the decision to place new aquatic recreation facility on the east side of the Plex property. He's just suggesting we eliminate east side and just have Plex property. Does that agree? What is? But maybe the CAO can speak to why. He just says the report's about the east side. Why the whole site and not just the east side?
Yeah, I think, as Jane mentioned, the time is to do an overall site master plan, and that might come up with 3 or 4 different options. I wouldn't want to limit it to one. If we get the right consultant, hopefully they'll give us choice, and I just wouldn't want to limit it.
Is there a consultant required for this? Can staff not find these?
Yes, no, a consultant is required for this. It's a technical exercise, it's space planning, it's engineering. We're beyond the point of drawing circles on a map. We'll start with that, certainly, but it is a technical exercise.
Okay. The Vice Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering, too, to our Deputy Mayor, for a long list, and 4 weeks is, I think 4 weeks may be a little tight. I'm just wondering about October 15th. What it does, it still allows 3-4 weeks to the deadline for the grant application. I mean, we can't. There's nothing stopping staff from starting to write the application now, for all that matter goes, and fill in the blanks later where the site is. So that shouldn't delay the submission of the application. October 15th. You still have a month, but in the meantime, the application could be started. I'm just wondering, Mr. Deputy Mayor, if we can see if you consider changing that to October 15th. I think it would just give more time. Be pretty tight, I think.
All right, that's been accepted by the mover and the seconder. I'll just make that change now. Further questions or comments? We heard a comment from the Director of Community Services about and it's in the recommendation that she presented about the business plan and making this decision to advance the business plan. What impact does the deferral till October the 15th have on the timeframes for delivering the YMCA business plan?
It certainly pushes the business plan date out, completion date out, until we get those detailed information to include in the business plan. So this is the thing, and my comment to the resolution is, maybe it's just because I've been sitting here a long time. This has been deferred an awful long time, we've commissioned a lot of studies. We have a lot of recommendations. We have a recommendation here from our staff, and in the report, the staff says that the proposal would work on the Plex site. We'll defer. We can defer. It sounds like council will probably defer, but we will be right back here when that time comes, and we'll have to make the decision. And I would only say that council will need eventually to decide, and we can answer these questions. And if the answers come back in a way that's not satisfactory, we will be back into a comprehensive site selection process. I have to be absolutely clear about that, because it's not something that you can just pick your finger on a map and say it's going to go here. There's a lot of implications for choosing sites. You put it over here, put it at the Lamont Sports Park. What do the folks in Southampton say? It's on the other side of Port Elgin now. It's another 15 minutes from where they live. You put it you put it over in Beaner Field. There's a lot of residents over there. Where do they all park? What happens with traffic? Right? Those are the things that's the politics that you will face as you change. And every option will have a series of negatives. Some financial, some community-based, some political, and there will continue to be disagreement around this table when the next site comes. So it frustrates me that we receive a whole bunch of expert advice over an extended period of time, up to and including tonight, from our own staff, and we can't just decide. So that's fine. We'll defer, and we can defer till the 15th of October. But let's come on the 15th of October and let's decide. Let's decide what we're going to do, because we've been lobbying hard, thanks to the work of the Vice Deputy Mayor, to open this funding window up. It was us that pushed that. It was us that helped make that happen. And then to miss the window, because we can't make a decision based on a series of reports we received for over a decade, would be tragic. And then also, if you don't put your strongest foot forward, and your application fails, and you lose the amount of money we hope to get, which I hope will be a significant amount of money, we jeopardize the very viability of the project. And I know that everybody around here, I think most everybody, I do at least, want to make the decision before the end of this term of council to build this thing. But I will not vote in favor of that if that choice threatens the financial integrity of the municipality. I won't do it. So we have to get as much funding as we can. And as the Vice Deputy Mayor rightly pointed out, we're cutting it close on this one. We'll cut right down the fine edge of being able to do this with our borrowing capacity and everything else. So we need every penny that we can get to make the thing work. And as we talk about second ice and more rec infrastructure beyond that, let's just remember that building this facility alone will be one of the most massive, as the Deputy Mayor rightly pointed out, one of the most massive investments we've ever made recreationally. And then to talk about a second ice pad or third ice pad on top of that, that's after spending $20-25 million on this thing, that's going to be at least a decade or 15 years out. That's going to be a $5 to $10 million project. So let's bear all that in mind. Let's come back here in October, and let's make a decision on a location. Let's get our applications in. Let's move this thing forward, and let's resolve to have this thing a decision to construct before the end of this term. I want to be casting that vote in 2022. So let's figure out how to do that.
And let's not create scenarios where we have a lot of delay. That would be my ask. I hope that we can achieve it. Yes, the Deputy Mayor.
I will guarantee you that if we have those questions made, we will be making the decision on the 15th. There's just too many what ifs, what ands. But there's a lot of questions that will come after that. But the big thing is staff starts on this report. They get this going. Placing in where it's going to be is the last part that we can do. Get these questions answered. I'll guarantee you I will give you my answer on that night.
Thank you. All right, we've had an excellent debate on this. Appreciate it all. One thing we discovered is that none of us are engineers, which is, I had no idea of that. The Vice Deputy.
Well, it's been told to us we're not engineers. But, Mr. Mayor, I just...
you said it yourself. You said you were an engineer.
No, I didn't say it was an engineer. But, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say that, singly, you're right. This is the most massive investment this community will ever undergo, or has undergone, will undergo. I just want to clarify this, that the Lamont Sports Park, and we heard the comment about the $1 million pumping station and $500,000 for a sewer line going into Lamont Sports Park. But boy, that's going to open up a lot of nice development at the Lamont Sports Park, by the way, if we happen to invest $1.5 million for a lot of other things. Business park, industrial park, maybe small housing development. Who knows? It could really open up that too. So all I'm asking for, I think, and what you're hearing around the table, Mr. Mayor, and this will be staff driven, just give it a chance. Give it a chance at Lamont Sports Park or one other site, privately perhaps, and do a little more work on this site to see if it all fits. But I hope before I can make an informed decision October 15th, let's give Lamont Sport Park a chance.
Just to be clear, the resolution for deferral does not include a request to examine other sites. It's a series of questions looking at this site, the Plex site, and trying to answer a series of questions about it. And it's not a review of new sites. That's the resolution on the table. So we're clear on what we're voting on. And I think we can get to the point where we can take the vote on the deferral. We've had a good discussion, and I appreciate it. So I'll ask the question on the resolution. All in favor? On your resolution for deferral. Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have a second motion I'd like to put forward.
So the resolution asks to strike an ad hoc advisory committee. In my view, that's needs to be brought forward as a notice of motion. So we can bring this forward. You can bring this forward on the regular council agenda tonight, if you like, as a notice, and it will come back to council in 2 weeks. So I'll just hold it here, and we'll do it then. Okay? We'll amend the agenda to do that. Okay. So. That moves us then on to the staff report on our zone respect and responsibility policy and procedure. The director, Lisa Billings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I'm here tonight asking for Council's approval to move forward our zone respect and responsibility policy and procedure. This is a working policy that we have been working kind of with the guidelines for the last couple of years with our user groups, and it is really about, I'm just asking to formalize the policy this evening so we can implement a complete rollout, just looking at signage, education and awareness, making the policy an official policy that can then be shared by our users within their organizations, their governing bodies, and then within the community services, our facilities, our properties, our programs, events. It really just speaks to creating and promoting a positive, safe, and supportive environment. A formalized policy will really provide us with the support necessary to implement enforcement if necessary. These situations are very limited in our facilities, and we do believe that we have a very safe space for people to come, but this type of policy would just formalize what we've kind of been working through for the last couple of years and what we've trained staff to do as well. So, any questions?
I'll read the recommendation and then we can ask any questions or comments. It's recommended that Council approve the R-Zone Respect and Responsibility Policy and Procedure and that it will be implemented in community services operated parks, facilities, and programs. Questions or comments to the resolution? Or recommendation, sorry. Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Billings, for preparing the report and the associated procedure and policy. It's a sad state of affairs in our society that we need to define what is acceptable behavior and unacceptable behavior. I think we all grew up in a different time, maybe, or I grew up in a different time when that was common sense and people naturally respected one another. But as it was pointed out earlier tonight, what is the norm for one person is not necessarily the norm for another person, and so that necessitates coming up with this. Now, this policy has been suggested earlier on this evening that this somehow infringes upon a person's rights, but I think actually what it does is it reinforces people's rights to enjoy their facility and to come to work, or as elected people to come without fear of ridicule or harassment or intimidation or threat of violence. And so I commend you on preparing this, and I will be supporting it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lisa, thank you, and I also support this. Just over the last week, the Memorial Garden at the rail trail has been the victim of, inappropriate use, first of all, about a week ago, and then maybe last Wednesday night, full-scale felony vandalism with one of the chairs that the rail trail purchased. It's a beautiful, at least $1,000 Adirondack chair, having a chunk cut out of it, picnic table damaged, lots of damage. As I said, over thousands of dollars of damage, and I think we unfortunately were being kind of forced into doing that, and I think this will help support those members of the community who put so much time and energy and money into making wonderful, beautiful places for the public to enjoy safer and to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from members of the committee? No? Well, thank you very much for the report and the recommendation, and you've heard it, so I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. All right, that moves us on then to communications and petitions for committee of the whole information. There are 7 items there. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to make in any of those? I don't see any. So the next one is, was there one? Did you, Councillor Matt?
Yes, I thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry for jumping in a bit late there. I just I wanted to comment on, as a member of the executive for the Lake Huron Fishing Club that runs the Chantry Chinook Classic Derby. I just wanted to reinforce what was in the letter, which is appreciation for all the town does to support that derby. We do a lot of work. The club does with our stocking programs, with our conservation programs. Stream rehabilitation programs, and it couldn't be done without significant proceeds that's raised through that derby and through other avenues. And so I just wanted to say thank you to the municipality and to the staff for supporting it, and we look forward to future success and future cooperation on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments on any of those items before I move off it? Doesn't look like it. So then there's Item 8, reports of municipal councillors and policy, and there's a report on there from me, and I just will highlight the one section of the report with regard to the AMO delegations. We were pleased to have applied for those 2 delegations, one with the Minister of Infrastructure and the other with the Minister of Long-Term Care, and the letters which we sent are attached, and I just wanted to give this opportunity. Those delegations were led respectively by the Deputy Mayor and the Vice Deputy Mayor, and I just wanted to give them an opportunity perhaps to report to Council on how those delegations went. Maybe we'll start with the Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Minister Fullerton, the Minister of Long-Term Care, actually, Councillor Grace, Councillor Smith sat in on that particular delegation and was able to provide some comments in support of the the Southampton Care Center, and they've applied for an additional 72 beds. And we talked about the acute need for long-term care beds for the town of Saugeen Shores to be able to keep your loved ones right here in the community, to where they have their room and their care, where you can go to visit right here locally rather than have to travel to Walkerton or Wyerton or Chesley or wherever the long-term care facility may be. And she was, she was quite receptive to what we had to say. We indicate, rural Ontario, sometimes our voice gets lost, and as compared to some other larger municipalities like the Lynn Network, soon to be changed. Our numbers sometimes get lumped in with London and other big centers, and it kind of distorts the numbers a little bit. And she understood that and was, again, receptive. Let's see what happens. I think hopefully in the next few months there's 15,000 beds, long-term care beds, that provinces decide to fund over the next 3 years. And close to 8,000 of those beds have been allocated to date, with 7,000 plus remaining to be allocated. And hopefully out of the 7,000 or 8,000 to be allocated, that will, Southampton Long-Term Care Center will be successful with their 72 beds. So it was a good, I felt it went well, and with the Councillor Grace Smith wanted to comment, but we were received well. So
Good. Well, thank you for that and your work there. And I just ask, and we've already talked a bit about the delegation with the Minister of Infrastructure, but if the Deputy Mayor has anything he'd like to add.
Again, I believe we were well received. We were supposed to meet with MPP Assistant Stephen Crawford, but he was unable to make it at that time, and we had 3 other assistants there who were very receptive of us. We talked about what we were planning to do, and they liked our ideas, but they did say that there are 2 big things that you must make sure that you do. 1, have a sound business plan, and 2, have a fully inclusive building, not just a one-off. It has to. The better chances you will have is if you have a fully inclusive building. And then again, they said before, we thought there might be 2, maybe 3 times that you could apply for this. They said they're not sure at the moment. I guess that will be determined by the election and the outcome of that, but it could be 1, could be 2, could be 3. So they said, do your best, and we'll wait and see. So that's what it is. We're kind of in a waiting game with this one. There'll be lots of applications. We're probably figuring, all the provinces and territories, 400 or 500 applications. So our staff will do their best, and we'll see where we go from there.
Good. Well, thank you all for those, for your work and for carrying forward those delegations on behalf of the municipality. So nothing further on that. Then we have reports of department heads, and there are 10 of them. So I'm just going to kind of go through them one at a time, and we'll ask if there's any questions or comments from committee members. Okay, only one from, okay. So I'll just add, so up till item, I guess items 8 and 9, staff would like to speak to those, but up to those we'll just kind of roll through and see if members of council want to speak to them. So the first one is the information report on the fall and winter leisure and volunteer fair. Nothing on that. Second one is an information report on Elgin Street reconstruction. Any comments? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It occurred to me when I was going through this report that it talks about the significant dewatering that needs to take place in order for this construction to take place at the bottom of Elgin Street. And this, along with some other drainage projects that are taking place in over the escarpment kind of area down there. Has there been consideration given to the spin-off effects? What I'm getting at is there's a number of people that live in that sort of highland area, Nodwell Park and east of there, that have sand points. And a number of them have been experiencing their sand points going dry this summer. And this is something that hasn't happened for decades. And this seems to coincide with dewatering and drainage systems and new subdivisions being put in down below. And I wonder if there's any consideration to the correlation between putting in significant dewatering and drainage systems down the hill and people's water tables being eliminated in their sand points. I wonder if the director might comment on whether that correlation has been made, or whether it's just a coincidence, or can this be something that we can expect to happen?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the dewatering for construction is temporary, so it goes in for the 2 weeks that the infrastructure is being put in place, and then it's pulled out and the groundwater returns back to where it was before construction started. So they're not related to dewatering for construction, the groundwater table changes that you speak of.
So we wouldn't expect this dewatering project to exasperate the situation that I'm describing, because the people up there are realizing now that they no longer have their sand points available to them. And we encourage people to use sand points because it takes load off of our water systems, right? And I know earlier on, there's been discussions between landowners about putting in drainage, and people are talking about water in their yards where they've never had water in their yards before, and we seem to be disrupting the water tables and the water flows and things, and I've just thought it would be worth bringing up to people's attention that when we put in a system or a drainage system or a ditch, or we add a new subdivision down the hill from somebody else, it can have unwanted and unexpected downward effects.
I think just to be clear, the director's made it clear that it's just a temporary process, only for a couple of weeks, and then it's over, and so it should have no permanent effect on those folks, this dewatering. So the next one is the information report on landfill fees. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I'm glad to see this, Amanda. We've been asking for this for a little bit of time. A couple questions. The $300 per ton uppage is great because staff at the dump says that the biggest problem is the unsorted waste coming in and them having to take the time to do it. But we're moving the tipping fee from $5 to $15. Is that the proposal?
Thank you, through you, sir. That is what we're proposing. Those two numbers are what we're going to give the consultant for the waste master plan that's going on, is what we see as fair and equitable charges.
Yep. With that $15, is that an increase in weight? So at the moment it's $5 for 100 pounds. Will that be increasing the weight, or will it stay at the 100 pounds for the $15?
It would stay at the same weight at
okay.
$15.
And as a result, we haven't mentioned anything about bag tags. We're keeping bag tags at the same price?
So back through you, the mayor asked me the same question, and so I looked at what we had done, and soon I looked back in the budget to see what we could come back with as a response to that. And there's a lot of variables in how we would implement that. It's very hard to determine how many bags a person puts out in a year. So when we took a look at the math on how many bag tags we sold, we only sell about half a bag tag a week per household. So there's a lot more work that needs to go in it. So we've put that question again back to GM Blue Plan, who's doing the master plan, to see where that comes in. We also know the price of the bag tags is directly correlated to illegal dumping. So we want to be able to balance those. So I want to look at what the rates are throughout Bruce County closer before we make a recommendation as raising the bag tags.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. At the $5 rate, people could take 5, 6, 7 bags out there and still stay within that $5 rate. By moving this up to $15, I'd like to see you maybe hold this for a year just to see the difference, because a lot of people do go to the dump, to the tipping, and they haven't been putting out on the curbside. So now with the increase to $15, I think you'll see an increase in the number of bag tags being used. So maybe if we could hold off for a year, do a study to see what that, the master plan will tell us, but that's just my recommendation. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Wyatt.
Further to that, the landfill fees, I support this move. But what it also drives the behaviors. You know, we talk about whenever you change something, behaviors change, and one of them is as the deputy mayor points out, people will start to maybe buy more bag tags. But the other behavior that it drives too is people doing illegal dumping. And there's been a number of incidents happened over this past summer of illegal dumping, where people have just taken it upon themselves to go down a quiet country road or a back alley or things and dump their garbage. And surprisingly enough, even when those individuals are identified, and even when those individuals fess up to actually making significant illegal dumping of, in one case, a few loads of shingles and roofing materials, and they caught the people that did it. And it was reported to the police, and it was really strange and shocking to me that the police couldn't even charge them. There was no charges to be laid. The way the rules work is if you're caught dumping, you get a warning, and then they say, well, you can go to the Ministry of the Environment. The Ministry of the Environment has a similar plan where you get a warning or you have to make some effort to go and clean it up. I would like to see our municipality get a little stronger on that and have a bylaw in place where if somebody is dumping garbage in the countryside or in somebody's back lot or on the side of the road, and they're caught doing it and they're identified, that there should be some teeth that the municipality can actually place a fine on these people, and if the fines are collected, it goes into the waste master plan. So I would make a request that this be considered for future consideration, that some kind of a local thing, because obviously the provincial statutes are inadequate, and it goes on, and people get away with it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be clear on this one. It's an information report, but staff has a recommendation in it. But just in the body of the information report, like, is it your intention to bring these recommended rates to council for formal approval at the fees and charges bylaw stage? Because right now you've recommended it, but council hasn't approved them, so they can't be implemented. What's the process from now, I guess, is my question.
Yep, that's correct. We're going to bring them forward as fees and charges, but I wanted to put this out as this is where we're going, and I would like to know sort of the litmus test before I come to fees and charges, if this is in line with what council was looking for last year when it comes to the scope of the increases that we're looking at. Thank you.
And I would just say on the bag tag question, it needs to be reviewed. That system does not function as it should because the bar to raise the price of bag tags is extremely high just from a political standpoint. Council's never been able, almost never, I think only one time we've increased the price of bag tags. So that portion of this waste stream is not keeping up with the inflation of the cost of our operating that system. And we just keep freezing it, and then massively increasing tipping fees at the landfill because that's much easier to do. And so we're putting a heavy burden on builders and people doing with large-scale dumping, and we're maintaining the status quo for everybody who's throwing out residential waste. So it doesn't function because we can't keep up inflation. So we must change the system so that the price of tags can inflate along with the price of everything else. And I think we need a new structure to make that work, and it doesn't work right now. So we need to address that. So that moves us on to information report on Mitchell Lane snow plowing. Questions or comments? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of questions for the director. Comparatively speaking, do other private lanes, you referred to other private lanes in your report, do we also service municipal and provide service of municipal and water and sewer mains on those lots on other private lanes?
On some private lanes, we do have municipal water and sewer that feed up them. This is unique in that Mitchell Lane is not an actual road. It's just land that was given to us as part of an estate. We have the infrastructure under it, and then other people have a right of way to travel on it to access their properties, but it's not designated in a bylaw as a road. And so then it's not the same as a private lane that's designated as a private lane in the bylaw.
So just one more question. So if you're going to the minimum necessary service, what would that be in terms of winter service?
So, and through you, it would be the last road plowed. So on the days that the machines are out, they'll get everything done, and then that he'll be able to finish his route by going down through Mitchell Lane.
Anything further on that one? No, then the next one is an information report on blind line snow plowing. Questions or comments on that one? Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this report was one that we asked for when I brought a motion forward last spring, maybe, last fall, about the possibility of turning around. So it'll come as no surprise to any of you that I disagree vehemently with this report. At no time did I request that the road be reconstructed and brought up to highway standards or sideway standards or any kind of standards. I suggested that the road is one that we maintain now in the summertime. We grade it, we put gravel on it. The road is 5 meters wide, so it's 28 feet wide. A snow plow is like, with its wing up, is about 8 feet wide. So it leaves about 20 feet for a car to pass. So to suggest that it's somehow unsafe that the snowplow might come across a car on probably the quietest road in all of Saugeen Shores during the 2.5 minutes that it takes to traverse this area is unsafe, I don't agree with. I think that there'd be a way for them to get around. The picture illustrates the width of the road. It's certainly not to the regular standard, but it's certainly not a country lane goat path or anything like that. And I also suggest that what I was suggesting is actually in my motion back when was to save time and effort for the drivers. Right now they come in, they go around the corner, they have to plow a big turnaround area, which is significantly dangerous for them. They have to back up to a 3-point turn, risking going in the ditch, and then they go around the block and they go in 1.25 kilometers the other direction. And they have to make another big turnaround area, and it takes them 3/4 of an hour to do this line. And that's from speaking with them back when. And I'm suggesting just give them the green light. They can do the whole thing in 7.5 minutes from one end to the other and be carried on. And then, we're investing in an additional snow plow today because we're adding more roads. I'm saying utilize our current equipment to its fullest and don't make these guys do dangerous 3-point turns and have to back out and waste time and waste effort and waste fuel and that all I was asking for is to just get efficient and drive through. Right now, the 3/4 of the road gets plowed anyway because there's an individual who chooses to access his property and has bought a truck, 3/4-ton truck with a plow on the front, and he plows his own way in. So most of the road is accessible now anyway. There's only about 3/4 of a kilometer that isn't open. And that's what I was trying to get across. And I fully expected that we were going to get a report that made it $1.461 million that was something that, of course, council isn't going to accept, and I wouldn't accept it myself. I wouldn't vote for $1.5 million to upgrade this road. All I was saying was let the drivers do what the drivers do, which is drive through and plow the road. Right? If they happen to come across somebody who's going the other direction, you might have to back up, you might have to pull over, but 5 meters is plenty of room to pass a truck. So I just, with all due respect to the director and the information that she put together here, I disagree with it, and I think that it was grossly overstated as to what was requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? All right, that moves on to the waterfront revitalization report. You have the survey results there. As you've heard, the survey results will be presented in detail on the 3rd. And just, of course, mention one more time that we are planning a public meeting on this question, on this matter, on the 3rd of September in this place at 6:30 p.m. So invite everybody to join us there. Item 7 is an information report on healthcare, and this one is here at my request. The CIO put it together. As everybody knows, that there's a great deal of concern in the community at the time being because we are back in a situation of having a shortage of physicians in the community, and I think it's important, felt it was important at this time just to sort of enumerate all of the work that the municipality is doing and has been doing on an ongoing basis to support the recruitment of doctors, and not just doctors, but primary care providers as well. It is a significant amount of work, quite frankly, and a significant investment being made by the town. Obviously, we are not having the level of success today that we need to have or want to have, and I can assure the public that the municipality will continue at this work until everybody in the community has primary care. And so that's there for your information. There's nothing further on that. Yes, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
May I just ask one question about the one paragraph? Staff will be looking to council in the near future for financial support to finish the lower level of the Saugeen Shores Medical Clinic in Southampton. So have we got the blessing? Not that maybe we need it, but we got the blessing of the practitioners there to do that, and what are the plans for the basement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we don't have the blessing of the local physicians yet. Our Director of Protective Services is leading this project for us. It's coming down to really the only viable location for the VON, for the nurse practitioner. It's unutilized, the space is empty. It does need some renovation to make it accessible. The VON, if we made that space available, they'd be able to bring in a second nurse practitioner, which would service about 600 or 800 people from our orphan patient list.
So we're still in discussions with the
Still in discussions, yep.
You can expect further recommendations to come from the administration on that issue when they're ready to come. Hopefully soon, because we'd very much like to get that additional nurse up and running.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, just to be clear, we own that building. And they are tenants of the upstairs, so we do own that building.
Thank you. Okay, so that moves on to item 8, an information report, operating financial results ending June 30th, 2019, and we'll turn it over to the treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. An information report at the last July council meeting detailed staff's commitment to produce quarterly financial results for the town. This report is the first attempt and first step towards meeting that commitment. And with that first step comes some learning curves for us, and it also comes with a bit of a preamble and some context for me about what you're looking at. So you may have noticed in the written report that it has a lot of language that sounds like qualifiers or disclaimers on the results. There were actually more in there at first, but it was rightly relayed to me that I was a little too cautious with my language and made it sound like we were doing something improper with our financials. That's certainly not the case. But I do want to talk about a few things about the report, and the first of that is to talk about an accounting cycle. Most organizations complete an annual accounting cycle. They're required to complete one. Organizations also complete monthly and quarterly accounting cycles. So that's what we're attempting to do here. In this particular period, January to June of 2019, the accounting cycle has not been fully completed to public sector accounting standards, but that just means that we have not reconciled and adjusted every account. I also want you to keep in mind that our budget is done on an annual cycle. So normally you would match your budget cycle to the accounting cycle that you're reporting on. That's the best way to accurately report variances. We don't do a monthly or quarterly budgeting process, but I have tried to adjust the results to allocate the budget to reflect the spending patterns that the town sees. The exercise of producing mid-year reports serves multiple purposes for our staff and for our organization, which is why I'm happy to be doing it. One purpose is to have a better grasp during the year on what we're doing right, what we may be doing wrong, and what actions we need to take during the remainder of the year to make sure that all of our financial targets and commitments are met. We made the decision in this report to give full detail of each operating division. So you'll see each operating division or program area split out with year-to-date results, both actuals and budget. This decision was made in hopes that it gives council faith that staff are being fully transparent with our results, and that it builds trust, builds the trust that council has in staff to monitor financial performance and be accountable for healthy and transparent financials. However, this report is not a forecast. It contains small elements or wording that contains some predictions, but it's not an assurance or complete predictor of where we'll be at year end. I also want to touch on material variance, because that's a term I used a lot in the report. A material variance, as I call it, is not the same as what an auditor would call materiality. They use aggregate materiality of about $600,000. Obviously, as an internal accountant, I have higher visibility into the organization's transactions, and I set a higher standard for the level of variance that is considered usual or acceptable to the organization. The main aim of this report is to give council updates on what I consider to be material variances so far in the year. So I have not highlighted all of the matters that may be of interest to council if they do not matter to the overall financial performance of the organization. So with all that out of the way, happy to say that the operating financials so far this year look to be in very good shape. Most service areas are in line with the budget or sometimes better, and as a whole, there are no departments that are currently causing any pressure on our year-end position compared to the budget. The key material variances identified in the report are all of a positive nature, such as the $630,000 modernization grant that we received from the province, as well as higher than expected Westerio dividend income. And there's some other unanticipated or unbudgeted revenues highlighted in the report. So those revenues will certainly help contribute to make sure that we're in solid position for our year-end transfers into reserves. I want to thank Council for their time in receiving the information, and I look forward to continuing to work with Council on getting you the financial information that you need, both so that you can have comfort with our performance and so that you can better communicate with and answer questions from the public on financial matters. And I'll now welcome any questions that you may have if you have any.
Thank you, Daniel. And just before I take any, just thank you so much for this report. We've been hoping to get these quarterly reports up and going for a while, and now you have them up and running, which is great. And it's really a really useful tool for council and the public to assess on an ongoing basis the operation of the municipality. So thank you. And are there questions from members? Councillor Grace.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Daniel, thank you for all the work and the report. I had two questions. One of the items that you identified as a major variance from the budget were labor vacancies, a surplus of $75,000. So my question was, are we spending money on overtime to make up the gap available in labor? Okay, thank you. My other question may be more appropriately answered by the Director of Infrastructure. On the chart where you talk about the projects that are being worked on right now or have been completed already that are in the 2019 budget, I think this is, well, I think it's on the second page. Yes, it's on the second page. And it's the Island Street Storm Sewer Outlet Improvements. And it says it's complete. By that, Amanda, I'm assuming that we're meaning that at this point, further advancement on the project isn't going ahead at this point. We've run into an issue with environmental assessment questions. It doesn't mean that the project is, well, it may mean that the project is over, but it doesn't mean necessarily that the project has been completed and everything's hunky-dory down there. Is that?
Thank you. That project has been taken off the work plan for engineering based on the last recommendation we brought forward that $250,000 was going to be needed to be invested into design work to advance it any farther. So it's not in our foreseeable future work plan unless a motion comes back from council looking at us to do anything further on the Island Street outlet.
And it's also my understanding that in one of the environmental reports, there was a finding that there were certain types of fish in the stream, and that would make it maybe unworkable and certainly more expensive. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the report. It certainly is a welcome addition, Daniel. I have a question, and then I have a comment, then a question, and a comment. So the comment is it certainly paints a rosy picture. We have all these surpluses and higher than expected incomes. And the question is, can you explain exactly what is supplemental taxation? And I got a comment after that too.
Supplemental taxation is additional taxation that happens through the year based on new properties or additions to properties.
So it's new tax rolls coming online?
Partially, yes. Mostly, yes.
Okay, or reassessments at a higher value, perhaps?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So do we not budget for that at the beginning of the year?
No.
No,
not
it starts. We don't count them before they're hatched?
No.
Right, okay. David, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. So Dan's answer is absolutely right. I wasn't wasn't going to comment on that, but I just wanted to clarify that, as Dan said, this is a point in time. These mid-year results don't predict future results, and the example is when we look at labor, and I'll use Jane's department as an example. High labor costs in the summer. She's bringing on students or other areas. So it's not 12 months. It goes up and down. So the financial information is really good. You don't want to be on the other side of it, but I wouldn't do a linear projection out to the end. We'll get there at some point, quite frankly, where we'll be able to predict year-end results more discreetly.
Right. I understand that. Just like snow clearing is always peaks in the wintertime. You get up easy in the summer on that. I just wanted to point out, too, when I went down to police services, it talks about police services revenue as being up, and we don't normally think about police services as a revenue generator, but in this case, it was correctly pointed out that was $81 that has been raised specifically through budget. $81,000, sorry. What did I say? $81,000 raised for the K9 unit, addition of a K9 unit. So that K9 unit is coming shortly, and it is 100% funded, right down to the doghouse and the marrow bones, I believe, and a vehicle to bring him around in as well. And I should have probably talked about this when the minutes of the last police service board meeting came through. With the addition of that K9 unit, we're looking for the dog is, I think, just in the breeding stage at this point in time, so he or she may not even be a puppy yet, but he's coming. He or she is coming soon. We're coming up with a name for the dog, and we have a number of names that have been suggested by the committee, and we're hoping to go out with some sort of a survey to the public. So we may be calling on our communications staff, corporate communications, to disseminate this survey and come up with a community-minded name. Now, a big chunk of that $81,000 came from our Burst Power partners. So names like Beta or Alpha or Gamma or Cobalt were high on the list as well. So those are some of the suggested names that we're looking at. So look for that coming out soon.
Okay, further questions? Yeah, the Vice Deputy Mayor.
And thank you for the report, Daniel. I appreciate it. And on the Appendix A, corporate, the only line I really didn't quite understand, and it's probably a simple explanation, is under 115 corporate, and the variance is $809,961. What does that line represent again?
That line represents, I would say, corporate revenues that are driven by corporate activities or grants. So in particular, that positive variance contains the modernization grant from the province.
Oh, okay. Which is a big amount, yeah. That was 600, 700? 631, right.
Anything else? The capital one follows. Did you have anything to add on the capital one, Daniel?
Yeah, just a quick comment on this one. Again, thank you. Just to explain that the reporting and the numbers contained in the report are preliminary. Not all of the checks that happened during the time of an annual audit have occurred prior to the capital report. The report details all of the projects that have any possible funding or any spending in the 2019 calendar year. And I wasn't going to highlight anything on specific projects other than to say that there are a lot of them. Staff are working away at progressing on all of the projects that Council has approved. And I think seeing them in the list, certainly for me, was eye-opening in terms of seeing how many things the town does throughout the year that have real impact on both our operations and on the community.
Thank you. The Vice Deputy Mayor?
I just want to say one thing. Over the years, council's commented on that we approve a whole lot of capital projects, and by year end, they're carried forward to 2020, some just for various reasons. And I just wanted to say that this is a good list. I think I want to commend staff for moving forward with so many projects here. It looks like very few are moving forward to 2020, which and the ones that are moving forward to 2020 are for very good reasons. So I just want to commend staff for undertaking. I mean, it's a huge list that they're carrying out here. So just want to show appreciation for all the good work to getting those projects done on time. So
further comments? No? Okay. So that moves on to the final one on the list, which is an information report on the tourism study. And I don't know, does the Manager of Strategic Initiatives wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will keep it very brief. Just a quick update to members of council to let you know the tourism strategy is certainly on time and on budget, and you can look forward to a further presentation from our consultant. We have completed all the consultation in the community, and that involved a focus group with stakeholders, tourism operators, event organizers, and key tourism partners. We had a focus group, many one-on-one interviews. Elected officials were involved in lots of these conversations, and we did have a survey open to the public online, and hard copies were available at the town office, and we saw over 1,100 responses. So the consultant was very impressed with the community engagement, and we're looking forward to hearing more from them shortly. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. We're looking forward to getting that report. So if there's nothing further on that, then we have reached the end of the agenda, and it's past 9 p.m., so we'll dispense with announcements by members and ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Schreider. All in favor? We're adjourned.